Thought I already had this one notched on the belt? Nope. Here's another popular comic series that I'm finally getting around to called It's wild that I'm just now getting around to reading this one, because I'm already a fan of Robert Kirkman, who also created The Walking Dead. But with great shame, I must admit, I didn't even learn about this superhero series until I saw it became a show on Amazon Prime. That's how everyone seems to discover comics these days. Only after it broke out into another medium. It was a sheep move of me, I know. Coming hot off The Boys. Whoa, no. Coming hot off of watching The Boys. I have no idea how to fucking say that now. I was watching The Boys, and then I got excited to watch Invincible. Since it had a lot of similar elements, being a dark and gory take on the superhero genre. But this one is animated, which I'm always here for. The show was a fantastic ride. I love the tone, the style, and I'm pumped as hell for season 2. But how does the comic compare? The only way to get my own thoughts on the matter was to break into this brick that is the Compendium 1. Compendium 1. You hear that? That's the smack of a Compendium 1. And read the first 14 issues that comprise of Amazon Prime's first season. And during my read, I noticed that there was one specific character that the comic used completely different compared to the show. Like, I was surprised by how disappointed I was whenever I read this character in the comic. I was disappointed so much that I never would have thought that they were going to be the main focus of this video. But before I open that can of worms, let's talk art. I was a huge fan of the drawing and colors. I love the simple shading techniques and the easy to register composition. And I really liked how the backgrounds were handled. Just enough detail for the reader to easily understand what space we were in. I tend to get a little crazy on my backgrounds, which can be brutal when I then have to redraw them multiple times and in multiple perspectives. And don't get me started on the coloring too. I don't know. I'm working on improving it. The backgrounds, not my awful stand-up or whatever the fuck that just was. But yeah, backgrounds. I'm still finding myself in this mindset where I look at blank or solid color backgrounds in my panels, which of course is way easier to produce, but I just get this empty feeling looking at them. Like I feel like I need to fill up the background with something. Also wasn't afraid to reuse panels or assets to help draw out the pacing or a beat of a moment. I started noticing it early on, but was never bothered by the strategy because it gives it like this cinematic storyboard-like feel. Plus, I do a similar thing for my comics, so can't hate. And there was this joke, a self-aware joke, that I was just an absolute sucker for. Mark asks a comic artist about using the same repeated panel technique, wondering if it's cheap or it's lazy, and the comic itself uses that very technique for the comic artist to go, no. Meta as hell, and I got a real kick out of it. If they tried that joke too early, like in the first 5 issues or so, I don't know if it was gonna land as hard. Character-wise, the show heightened the involvement and depth of almost every single character, which I consider a massive win. It was interesting reading the comic after the fact and noticing how much they breezed by almost like every character of the show. Teen Team, Eve, Robot, Cecil. But one character was brushed by time and time again, and I found myself bummed every single time. Hell, I didn't even realize how much I liked this character until I saw how underutilized them in the comic. The show left me with a stronger impression from this character that I guess I was just excited to see in the comic form.
Who's that character? It's Debbie!
Yep. Character I was most bummed out about from the comic was Mark's mom, Debbie. Slight spoiler recap. So read the comics or at least watch the first episode of the show before continuing. The comic heavily focused on the relationship between Mark and his dad, Omni-Man. That was the core of this arc, which I guess explains why every other character was so thin and just brushed to the sidelines. The same goes for Debbie. She was used more as a comedic tool to show the stark contrast in everyday human life compared to the insane superhero shenanigans Mark and his dad would get roped into daily. They'd come back from some interdimensional warfare and Debbie would go, "That's nice. Can you pass the salt?" Pass the salt? After her family, bruised and weathered, tell her the most outlandish stories while on hero duty. The only thing affecting her is the lack of sodium in her taste buds? Yep. And the humor in dismissing these impossible feats worked every time. The choice to focus on Mark and Omni-Man exclusively is supposed to give us this confusing gut punch of betrayal when it's later revealed that Omni-Man has sinister motives for Earth. But in the show, that gut punch reveal wasn't just for Mark to experience. It was for Debbie too. So Omni-Man kills the Guardians of the Globe at the end of the first episode, and it is an intense what the fuck moment. But in the comics, we don't see Omni-Man kill the Guardians until like issue 10 or something, which creates a more confusing reaction after bonding with the father-son duo for a handful of issues. But the show starting off with that violence created a really cool mystery detective angle, where we as the audience know Omni-Man has something evil brewing, but now it's just a slow burn where the other characters have to uncover the truth and inevitably have a tense confrontation. And that's where Debbie really broke out of her comic shell and became a deep and engaging character. In the show, she was investigating and learning haunting information that developed an uneasy strain between her and her husband. And I couldn't wait for her to find out the truth and see how that confrontation would go down, for both her and Mark. But in the comics, only Mark gets this moment. We experience everything through his eyes alone. And even in the aftermath of the battle, Debbie doesn't even get more than a page or two to show how she's taking things. Comics did her dirty. Except the comics were made first, so the show glowed her up tremendously, I guess. But it was still an incredibly fun read, and I'm excited for season 2 of Invincible. I'm unsure if this time I should read the comic first and watch the show after, do a little reversal for the next video, or just watch season 2 and read the comic. Let me know in the comments which you'd prefer. I don't even know when season 2 hits Amazon, but there's enough time to figure it out. So thanks for watching me talk about Invincible. I'm saying Invincible.